about how objects move in zero gravity. May the universe be with you, ladies.
All of them have had so much hard training to get to where they are today. Let's continue our studio conversation with our guests here. How strenuous, Mr. Xu, was the training for all the taikonauts? They obviously had to train underwater to simulate that microgravity environments, but how long was the training? We know that this crew was selected in 2019, so they've been training for at least 2 years.
Well, more than that, the underwater part is the fun part, if you call it training,
part.
because lots of astronauts, after they retire, they become professional divers. They go to exotic places for diving experiences. Those are part of the training, what we call spin-off of the training. But the real training is on physical fitness, on psychological breakdowns and everything. That lasts longer than 2 years. The 2 years, after selection of the mission is focusing on the mission itself. Each and every move needs to be repeated and repeated and repeated. So you have to do a preparation training plus the mission training.
How do you train somebody's psychology? How do you prevent them from breaking down psychologically?
Well, I think there are many ways to do it.
Mock-up scenarios.
There are many simulations. There are more even psychological plus physical, and also there's a confined space. You have to stay in a sustained period of time. Isolations. It's in particular for one-man mission. This is very challenging for human bodies.
You have to respond well to those scenarios in order to become an astronaut, right? And those underwater training, Professor Yang, the flight commander, Zhai Zhigang, actually said that the underwater training is more difficult than the actual EVA, the actual spacewalk. And they say training underwater for 5 or 6 hours is like running a full marathon. What kind of experience was that like?
You are correct. You see that the underwater training, or the what we call the neutral buoyancy pool training, will be the most ideal one to simulate the microgravity environment operation. But you see also there are differences. So we need the Marines to help the astronauts in these kind of trainings. You see that the difference of pressure between the inside the spacesuit and outside suit is about 40% of the atmosphere. So this is a very great pressure difference. You see that because of the existence of this pressure difference, it will be very difficult for you to even change the shape of your arm. So this is quite different to exhaust a lot of your strength. So for Yaping has already mentioned, at first she has not realized that it is so difficult. But after many trainings, she has come to used to this kind of training and always feel very cheerful after this kind of training. But during the first several trainings, they can even take up the chopsticks for her. So you can see how tough it is for her.
So female astronauts do get the exact same training as their male counterpart?
Yaping has a famous saying that the crucial space environment will not comfort you because you are a female.
Yeah, there's one question that I really want to ask, because I watched this interview with Wang Yaping, and she said apparently there is a red button that astronauts in training can press. If they can't take it anymore and the training will stop. But throughout the years, no astronaut training to be a taikonaut has ever pressed that button during training. Is that true? How does the red button work?
That's the G-force training. That's the tough one.
I mean, G-force, for G-force, for example, there is a certain G-force that you will break down and you will lose your conscious. And then once you lose your conscious, there's no point to press the red button. There's no way you can press it.
Has anybody ever passed out?
It's very easily. For ordinary people, maybe 6 or 7 G, you will pass out
That's
with a
awful.
fast spin.
But they won't be enduring that much G forces during this mission, right?
During
Top
launch,
is
What you
about
mentioned is a
5G?
normal condition. During the normal flight trajectory, the G-force is about 3 to 5 times your own weight. But you know that the astronauts are trained not only according to the normal cases, but also they must meet the emergency cases. In emergency cases, they will have what we call the ballistic re-entry. During this re-entry, they will experience a G-force higher than 8 times your own mass.
Wow.
So they must be trained for this. And moreover, you see that there are 2 categories of astronauts. One has the capability of piloting the ship. For these astronauts, even at 8G, they must have a capability to have response. So we have some flash inside the beacons inside this training cabin, and also they have a button, another button, so they have to respond to these beacons. So this is very important for them to have the capability to operate the piloting the spaceship in emergency cases.
8 Gs. There's
Yeah.
no way I can survive that G
Yeah.
training.
And you see that during the first 2 flight missions of US are all suborbital missions, and they even experience more than 10 G.
Wow.
Professor Yang, hold that thought. I'll be getting back to you in a few moments. A group of Chinese students have taken their passion for space and translated it into sound. Our next report tells us more about the innovation and the inspiration behind it.
Before infants see the world, they hear from inside their mother's womb. What are the sounds of the universe for mankind? In 2020, a dozen students specializing in aerospace, art, architecture, and music formed a team. Their aim: translate the universe into sound and music that we can hear. And this is their final product, a sonic art device. It consists of 2 parts. A small ball in a glass box randomly floats on a satellite, and a sensor captures its data. The satellite also collects real-time data of cosmic rays and transmits them to the Earth.
Sorry to interrupt, but you are currently watching my live stream for the Chinese mission. It's a Shenzhou 13 Chinese space flight live right now. And this mission, it has been planned for the last 6 months and will be piloted by Zhai Zhigang, 55 years old, Wang Yaping, 41, and Ye Guangfu. And she is actually the first Chinese female astronaut to work on its new Tianhe core module of the Chinese space station. So this is a very interesting flight. And the flight will mark the 8th crewed Chinese space flight and the 8th crewed flight of Shenzhou program. The spacecraft is scheduled to carry the taikonauts on the 2nd flight to Tianhe 1. That's the first module of the Chinese modular space station. So there. Let's watch it.
这么大体积的一个航空器运到上面去，也没有去说，在那里读个新闻联播，而是选择了放一段音乐，然后那一个感觉就是很触动我。我觉得中国人很有情怀。
我觉得人类本身的进步就是一种最大的浪漫。然后我觉得人类未来必然面对的困境就是地球上的资源枯竭。然后，这种困境使我们必然将脚步迈向更深的星辰大海。
我觉得中国航天一直在做的一件事情，就是这种探索未知的精神，它是给我们一种精神力量。这个东西到底能不能成，能做成什么样？到底火星能不能适合人居住？这些东西它不是有一个明确答案的，它是需要来回考量的。那这样一个状态，然后一直鼓舞着我们，这种状态是我比较向往的。
《
This is the live picture you're looking at, the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the launch pad. As we speak, the launch tower has opened more. The level 1 has opened, revealing the stage 1 rocket and the side boosters of the rocket. As we get close to time 0, of course, we're close to T-minus 30 minutes. We're getting real close now. And you know, the previous Shenzhou 12 mission actually generated a lot of interest among people. People love to watch astronauts doing even nothing there.
Because they're having a 5-year hiatus before that manned flight.
Yeah, they're fascinated. You know, they're super interested in life.
Absolutely.
On life in space. So, do they have a routine living in space? What factors were taking into consideration when deciding a routine for the astronauts living in space?
Well, as we know that the astronauts, once you're in microgravity environment, you lose your bone mass, calciums, your muscles, your cardiovascular system weakens, your nervous system weakens. Like Ye Guangfu said, your tongue will swollen. So there are many physical changes. So you have to adopt the space environment in appropriate ways for daily life. So we have just heard that there's 1 hour preparations. So the astronauts, once they're in space, they will be working and exercising and sleeping as a routine, similar to the timing of the ground. And they're adopting to such a timing so that there's a Beijing time, and they also wake in the Beijing time, and overnight they sleep at the same time. So they're working in synchronized way with the ground crew and supporting crew in the ground.
Right, and we do have a female astronaut this time. Are they preparing any supplies, especially for the lady?
Well, I did heard that they shipped a lot of cosmetic products over there. Yes. And some of the beauty products are only for space ladies. So,
so makeup is not an inconvenience, right? They can wear makeup.
Apparently so.
On a daily basis.
And Yaping was mentioning in her interview that she said once you're in space, you're off the gravity of the ground, so nothing drags your face down. So
you actually look better,
you have a natural
younger.
beauty over there. Yes, you look younger.
It's beauty sleep every day for 6 months.
And
That's
in fact,
exactly
as Ye Guangfu mentioned, that the blood flow changes. You have more blood on your face rather than foot.
But what kind of impact will it have, on their psychological status living there for 6 months?
You know that although the Tianhe is the biggest spacecraft of China, is a volume about 50 cubic meters, but still it is a narrow place for 3 crew. So stay in a very narrow place can cause many psychological problems. That is what we discussed, that to have both men and women in the crew will be easier for us to solve these kind of psychological problems. You see that this is very useful, and it is part of the scientific research. In the future, you know that the low Earth orbit and the moon will not be the final stop of human being. We will go to the Mars sooner or later. So the one trip to Mars will spend for about more than 1.5 years. During this mission, we will get more challenging psychological problems. So it is believed that we should have both female and male astronauts inside the crew cabin. So before that, we should test this on the low Earth orbit. So the space station will be a very ideal place to test what you mentioned, how to solving the psychological problems.
And as we speak, the top level and the bottom level of that launch tower has opened. You're seeing the escape tower looking from afar like a lightning rod, really. But it's 8 meters tall. It's smaller compared to the whole rocket, but it's still huge compared to my height.
The Long March 2F, the total length is about 58 meters, and you may notice that the rotational platform on the top has already been opened, and the emergency escape tower has already exposed to the open space. Right. So at a certain moment, maybe several minutes later, there will be validation of the emergency escape. You know that when the ground staff is on the launch complex, usually it is not allowed to switch on this emergency escape.
Sorry to jump in here, Professor Yang. We are 30 minutes away until a liftoff. We should expect an official announcement confirming the countdown. We understand the ground staff are being cleared from the launch pad. This is T minus 30 minutes. Let's get an update from CGTN reporter Ning Hong, who is near the launch site and who is watching all these developments on the ground there. Ning Hong, what are you watching now? What is happening?
Well, yes, it's 30 minutes countdown, and you can see now the lower section of the rotating support platform has opened, and I believe we will soon see that the entire rocket will be revealed. And now, people are now making the final preparations, including evacuating from the launch pad. You can see now. You see, you can hear there's a speaker telling people at the launch site that this is voice from the commander of the zero commander. He will be responsible for launching the rocket, the final countdown. And now they're checking the systems, and what we are going to see now is that the rocket will be standing by about 150 meters away, about 100 meters away from us. And also, I want you to pay attention to the rocket itself, because since Shenzhou 12, for every manned spaceship launched, there will also be a manned spaceship as a backup standing by. So the Shenzhou 13 and also the CZ-2F rocket are actually the backup of Shenzhou 12. And for rocket standing up there, preparing for emergency for so long, it's quite a difficult thing to change it into a rocket right now. So the rocket had go through very thorough examination and testing just to make sure that it will satisfy the need of this mission. And for every step people take here is making history. Yeah, back to you.
And you'll appreciate that update from on the ground there. If you're just joining us here on CGTN, we are less than 30 minutes away from liftoff. These light pictures show that some of the platforms have opened. More are opening as we speak, revealing the rocket that will carry another 3-person crew to China's space station.
And they're opening at a relatively slower speed. Why are they doing it in such a
They're
slow
already quite quick, because
Really?
this is operated pneumatically with pneumatic mechanism, and then they open gradually. Before they open, they have to make sure that all essential connections are still maintaining connected, and this is only disconnected at the last minute. So you can still see some umbilical cords, some cables, and some connections, and some holding devices are still there. But in fact, the rocket is holded on the bottom side, and is kept in such a balanced way. It does not use the robotic arm to hold it.
Yeah, this is the close-up shot of the rocket, and for that segment, I think the spacecraft is encased in that part, right?
Exactly. On top is the fairing part, and it is still encaged, because some of the ground crews are still there. The last crew leaves T minus 15 or 14 minutes. So they're still, a couple of guys are still there just in case they need it. And they have to attend the crew once it's there. You see that the top part is also opening up. So we're seeing that the crew probably has just left.
Hi, this is Static Particle, and you're currently watching my live stream of the Shenzhou 13 launch. This is being carried by the Long March 2FG rocket. It's a 58-meter rocket, and it's got pretty much big fairings, about 3 meters. Stage 2 rocket, and yeah, this is a pretty much interesting mission, because this will be the first time that the Chinese will send a female taikonaut. So we are now down to T minus. Let's see, where's the T minus? Can't find that on the screen at the moment. But anyways, hope that you're enjoying watching this live stream, and you can also check out me on Twitter. That's at Gal Static. So Shenzhou 13, this will be actually the first long duration Chinese space station crew. They'll be staying at the space station for about 6 months. And this is the second Chinese crew members that will stay on the Chinese space station for this year. And yeah, we've got some pretty exciting launches coming up for the next few days. Tomorrow will be, is that tomorrow? Lucy, Atlas 5, and Lucy will be launched tomorrow. That's another pretty exciting launch that I might cover. And we have the Soyuz Ms-18 undocking that will happen on Sunday, the 17th of October. So the crew members there on the Soyuz Ms-18 will be Oleg Novitsky, Klim Shipenko, and Yulia Petesil. So bring you back to the live broadcast from CGTN.
The Long March 7 is used for launching of the cargo spacecraft, the Tianhe spacecraft. So it is very powerful and also can have a capability about 13 to 14 tons to the low Earth orbit. Both Long March 7 and Long March 5B can only be launched in the Wenchang spacecraft launch site.
So this rocket, Long March 2F, is the least powerful of the three. Am I right?
No, not
necessarily.
Not the least powerful. You know that it also, you may notice that it has 4 boosters. So it is a mid-sized launch vehicle in China, but it is used for launching low Earth orbit payload. It has 2 versions. For this launching a crewed spaceship, the capability is about 8.1 tons. For those launching, for instance, Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2. Okay, the capability is 8.5 tons because it don't have an emergency escape system.
I believe we have a full visual of the Long March 2F rocket.
That's right.
As the platforms have all opened.
Yeah, the interesting part of these 3 rockets that you mentioned is they are also assembled and integrated and shipped vertically. In comparison with previous rockets where horizontal assembly and integration and then vertical launch, this is shipped vertically from the AIT center, so vertically transport to the launching pad itself. And so these are, the purpose of this is because the launching status is vertical. So every component, every subsystems has to be vertically viable before launch. So this is maintaining the same status as we prepare to launch it. So this is more safe and more practical in the international community.
So now, this is a common practice.
Yes, it's common practice in even in Europe and US because vertical assembly is more, more closer to the status where you're going to launch it. And that's
what Yansong mentioned, we call this triple vertical mode. The assembly them vertically and transfer them vertically and launch them vertically. So the triple vertical. But for the Long March 7 and Long March 5B you mentioned, it's called the new triple vertical mode because not only these procedures are vertical, but also the connection, because there is a very small service tower on the mobileable platform. So all the cable connections and the pipe connections are also do not change in the VAB and in the launch pad. So this is more convenient for usage.
Well, the first Long March 2F rocket was actually launched in 1999, right?
Exactly.
Have there been any upgrades?
Of course, there are many upgrades every time. You see that at that moment, our launch vehicle is the maiden flight is to test the whole the launch complex and compatibility with the launch vehicle itself and the test vehicle Shenzhou 1. But only after some improvements in this launch vehicle, we can launch Mr. Yang Liwei into orbit in 2003. After that, we also have some improvement in the, for instance, the inertial measurement unit, and also with the telemetry support system. You know that during the early launches, we still don't have the Tianhe data relay satellite. Today, we can have the Tianhe data relay satellite, which can provide us greater coverage of the telemetry support. So this is quite different, and this is very unique, very helpful for ensure our safety.
It's T-minus 19 minutes, 53 seconds. We're getting really close. I mean, how reliable can we say this rocket is? A few upgrades have been made to the Long March 2F rocket to improve reliability and safety of a launch. Recently, Mr. Xu, talk to us. What are they?
Yeah, I mean, once you have a safe and working system, you don't tend to change it and upgrade it, periodically. You tend to freeze the status, hardwares and softwares. There's a saying, if you upgrade a software in one point, there's a 15% chances you get a fault alarm or fault, bad part in other parts. So it's a complete system. Once it's completed, technically you freeze that status, and this is why we're still using the same fuel system. UDMH, nitrogen tetroxide, are not so friendly. Toxic, corrosive, but it's safe and it works in room temperature. And once it automatically combusts without even ignitions. So there are many things that we tend to freeze it and not to upgrade it. Maybe we develop a new system, and like a new generation capsule I've just mentioned, need a new launch vehicle that will have another system. Like Ye Guangfu said, this is a only human-rated launch vehicle and needs to be maintained in such a stable way that safety comes priority, not propulsion, not a powerful engine. This is 8 metric ton capability to low Earth orbit in comparison with Long March 5, which is 25. So safety has been considered as priority.
At this stage, the 3 Taikonauts have pretty much finished up everything in terms of preparation, right? We've seen visuals of them positioned in the capsule. They still have that manuals in their hands, but they're not reading it anymore. They are waiting for that final moment before liftoff.
You may notice that although the rotational platform has already turned over and we can see the whole launch vehicle, but still you may notice there are some steel arms close to the vehicle.
What are those for?
These arms have the cables to have the signals. We can get every important telemetry data from the launch vehicle and from the spaceship, and to check if everything is okay. And also we have power supplies to the last of some critical systems, for instance, such as the control system. And also you see that we can also provide gas to the pressurization system. At current stage, all the fuel tanks of the Shenzhou of the Long March 2F is pressurized and is in the right pressure. Also, this pressure is well monitored. So only in the last several seconds we can see the rotation of these arms.
You'd also talk to us about this mission. What are the most difficult parts? Mr. Xu earlier mentioned this is more like a renovation mission rather than a scientific experiment mission. Is that right?
In this mission, you know that this will be the first female EVA of China. We have already carried the third EVA spacesuit by the Tianzhou 3 cargo ship to our station. This spacesuit is dedicated especially for Yaping. So it is smaller than the former 2 EVA spacesuits. So this time Yaping can be very comfortable. I can still remember that that we only have limited numbers of training spacesuits near the neutral buoyancy pool. So every time that Yaping's feet is smaller than his male colleagues. So she needs some adaptations.
He started to jump in. We have to mention that is now T minus 15. 15 minutes ahead of launch.
And ground staff have been evacuating from the site, meaning that all preparations have finished.
We're entering the final stages there.
Yeah.
It is pretty quiet. Nothing much going on in the comm system. I suppose they have finished all the final status checks by now.
Actually speaking, everybody is busy now. That's the launch procedure.
Yeah, an official announcement confirming the countdown of 15 minutes. We're 15 minutes away from liftoff.
But just bear in mind that after ignition, it take only 8 minutes.
Yeah, it's a pretty short flight.
Yeah. That's the launch procedure is coordination of a big system between many systems. So you may notice the voice between the zero commander with other systems. For instance, the ground stations in other places, either in China or outside China. And also we have space tracking ships on the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. So all these systems must be in a very good condition.
You see the ground crews are leaving, so that's the last crew that leaves the launch complex.
So after this point, no ground staff will be at that launch power.
The rocket is fully armed and it's ready to be ignited. So very dangerous at this moment, as Ye Guangfu mentioned, there are more than 400 metric tons of fuels and oxidizers on board. So it's like a bomb.
It's a violent energy exchange.
Yes.
So there will be no staff in a radius of how much?
Well, this last group, because the control center is about 7 or 8 kilometers away from the launch complex, but launching witness can be done 2 kilometers away. So there's a mathematical calculation that you don't get hit it.
Our correspondent Ning Hong there might have a better vantage point than us.
Yes, I believe he does.
Yeah, but in fact, in Zhouchuan is the closest that you can get to a launch vehicle. Last time I was there to see a Long March 2D launch, I even got some debris on top of my head. They dropped something on your head.
How far away were you
I was
from?
about 1.7 kilometers away. That was
that's
very
considered a
close.
safe
Very close.
distance.
Yeah, that was considered very. But these
Very noisy.
Yeah, very noisy. Yeah, heart pounding. I just saw a launch yesterday from Taiwan, and they launched our ABSCO satellite. And also, it's very shocking if you're one kilometer away from.
Well, the final ignition time has already been confirmed.
And it's down to the seconds, right?
Yeah, correct. Down to second. You know that the trajectory must be carefully calculated several times and updated, because we should consider the relative position with the launch site and also our Tiangong space station. Because the target is the Tiangong space station, we must consider the relative position. And the basic requirement for the launch vehicle is to, when it comes into the orbit, it must in the same orbital plane with the Tiangong. Because this is the most important requirement. But usually they are in different places. So that is why we choose a lower orbit than the Tiangong. So because in a lower orbit, it can rotating around the Earth faster. So the Shenzhou spaceship, after it coming into orbit, will be the chasing vehicle, chase the Tiangong space station within several hours. And then when it's chasing up, it can dock with the station.
And remember last time we were covering the launch of Tianzhou 3, you mentioned that launch window was a narrow launch window instead of zero launch window.
Yeah.
What about this one?
Yes, this is also adopted. Today we use not the zero launch window any longer, because the technology has been improved. Now we can choose a narrow launch window, which provides the possibility, feasibility to other systems, but with a more strict requirement to the launch vehicle itself or to the algorithms and the control system.
But for now, the rocket is expected to launch. They are aiming to launch the rocket at 23 minutes, 53 seconds past midnight. Beijing time here is down to the seconds.
It's a very precise window of opportunity.
There you have it.
That's been meticulously calculated, as you heard from our guest, Professor Ye Guangfu, in the studio. We are now about 10 minutes away from liftoff.
You know that it is very interesting that China and other countries use different definitions. In our China, the time zero means ignition. But for US, for instance, for the launch of space shuttle, the time zero means that the lift off. So the ignition is just several seconds before the lift off.
Right. There is a narrow gap there.
Yeah, but the number is very important. What we call the root parameters that you change. You calculate a lot of things according to it. Trajectories, the inertials, many things that navigation is based on this exact timing.
Again, live pictures from inside the capsule where the 3 taikonauts have been seated and are bracing for liftoff.
A nerve-wracking moment, actually,
Absolutely.
for us who are watching. I mean,
my hands are getting sweaty right now. My palms are getting sweaty just watching this. We know we've done this before. We did this only a couple months ago, but still it gets nerve-wracking every time with the countdown.
And it gives me goosebumps every time I watch a rocket launch.
Yeah, you can imagine that there's a huge team behind the astronauts. You see 3 astronauts, but the ground crew, the control center, the Beijing center, the TTNC boat, their whole team of ground control systems, observations and tracking and controls. There are thousands of people that are currently working, just like we are, to see the historic moment.
You know, there might be just the 3 of them right now on that pad in that rocket, but they're not alone. And they know this. They know that they have the backing of an entire team.
Yeah, they're relying on the team to get them out there safely because things are basically out of their hands by now. There's nothing much they can do.
As Professor Yang mentioned, this is a system engineering program. You have a rocket system that we're going to see just going to be lighted up, but there's also 7 other systems that you don't realize very easily, like life support system, astronaut system, recovery system, TTNC system, and they're complete system that has to work simultaneously to make this work.
Everything has to go right.
Everything has to
for
come
a
together
successful mission,
for that to happen.
Is that the moon we're seeing?
Yeah, I think so.
Quite a clear sky. We can see the moon. Good visibility. Like I mentioned, 30 kilometers for the visibility.
Yeah, Qiuyan, you've been there before. You know that, especially in summer, the sky of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is really clear.
Majestic.
And we can even see the Milky Way there.
The stars, the moon.
I think the site is chosen for its seldom precipitations. There's not much rain there, so you see clear skies. And if it's not windy and sandy, it's a good day for launch.
Yan Song has already mentioned the rain. The rain is a limitation, a restriction to the launch. So the wind should not be too strong, and also it is not suggested to launch during the raining. And after several seconds after liftoff, actually speaking about 12 seconds after the liftoff, we will have a very important operation pitch over to change the flight directions to the eastwards. Actually speaking, several degrees to the also to the southeast. This is because that the latitude of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is about 40 degrees to the north. And our orbit is about 41.5 degrees, the inclination. So this determines the direction, in which direction the rocket should fly.
So, we often discuss weather conditions on the day of the launch. So the most important thing, is it no precipitation as
no
Professor
thunder.
No thunderstorms.
No thunderstorms, okay.
Not much strong wind, it's particular side wind, otherwise, it'll blow it off.
And that can be predicted as they determine the day to launch?
There are meteorological service system that is just for this space.
But how accurate is that?
It has to be very accurate.
Yeah,
it has to be very accurate.
The weather forecasting system is a very important part of the what we call the launch site system. And that's the not only the wind speed in the troposphere, but also in the stratosphere must be in a very strict limitation.
This is T minus now 5 minutes ahead of launch. Soon we'll hear the call out from the control center. And you can see the face shield of these astronauts are still up. I suppose they will close the face shield momentarily. And the robotic arms are still attached to the rocket.
Yeah, they're still open their face shield because they can still communicate minutes before the launch. And like you have just mentioned, they're holding a book in their hands. And you can notice that it's still on the first page. I mean, it's a thick book for 60 days, maybe, not just for launch. So for every day, probably they have 1 or 2 pages that they have to conduct.
Usually several minutes. Okay, T minus 5 minutes and counting. Usually several minutes before the launch, also the ground commander will also confirm whether the astronauts are okay for the launch, go for launch. So they will also check their own status, not only the ground staff. So if anything wrong happened, they can halt the whole launching procedure.
Okay, they're doing something now. They're
fixing their safety belts.
Fold their legs. They cannot stretch it anymore. So this is the bracing position.
the basin.
It is like a basin, the
they
seat.
are putting down the shills, are they?
Yes, they're fastening their seat belt, I think, seat belt, and they're in the folding position. You know, before that they were stretching their legs. So this is T minus 5. That means that they have to be ready and helmet down, I think.
That's the live picture of the Beijing Aerospace City. Officials there are watching. There you see Vice Premier of China,
Yes,
Han Zhong there.
top Chinese officials are watching the launch from control rooms. Chinese Vice Premier Han Zhong and the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang, are at the Beijing Control Center, while CMC Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia is at the Jiuquan Launch Center.
The Vice Premier was also there for the launch of the Shenzhou 12 mission.
Yes, he was.
Really showing that how important they see these missions. There you see the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Mr. Xu Qiliang. He is watching the launch right there at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, along with other scientists, engineers, and military personnel.
This is on top of the balcony that the astronauts stay in. So that is the complex about 7 kilometers away from the launch complex. So I used to witness some of the launches over there on the top. There's a huge platform, and you can stay on top. And there's a room that with the TVs they can see this real status.
And you can hear the loud sound there during the launch.
But that travels quite a few seconds before you get
President
the sound
Hu
get
Jintao
there.
watches the launch of the Yang Liwei in 2003.
There you see face shields down, ready in position.
And we are 2 minutes away from liftoff.
And the books are off.
The books are off. A lot of my attention is on the books.
What do you think is going through their minds right now? They look pretty composed, pretty calm.
Send me to space.
Send me to space. I cannot wait. I've waited long enough. I've waited long enough.
10 years for Zhai Zhigang.
Can they talk to each other at this point? Can they hear each other?
They can do so.
Okay.
Yeah, but electronically with the microphone.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering if they have blue teeth. Maybe it's a new thing for them.
Maybe not compatible with our common Bluetooth,
Yeah.
but also some similar
secured,
radio
secure
communication,
channels.
with different frequency.
Yeah.
Very soon, we're going to see some critical final movements. The umbilicals will detach from the rockets approximately 40 seconds ahead of launch.
Just the water will be poured at the bottom.
Yeah,
of
that's the call out,
1 minute
T-1.
countdown.
An
Yeah.
incredible
This is the
moment to
moment.
witness. Yeah,
This is the moment.
Truly a magnificent view there.
50秒，50秒。
50 seconds.
50 seconds. And it never gets old.
And there you have it, the opening of that retractable robotic arm.
The arms are opened.
The rocket is completely on its own, ready
30秒，
to take
30秒
off.
30 seconds till
Blast
liftoff.
off.
Looks like a moonshot. Ready.
，20秒，20秒。
20 seconds away. I'm leaving my favorite part of the countdown to you, Chu-Yuan. You want to do the honor?
Sure.
10-second countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Together. 3, 2, 1.
Ignition.
There we go.
起飞，气流，动动，2、3分。
You see some white boards falling off. Is that considered normal? That's
yes. That
protection
keeps the temperature.
shield, right?
Insulation.
Yeah, power is clear.
酒泉程序转弯。
All right, we're going
Pitch
to see
over.
a number of critical stages throughout the flight. We're going to be walking you through each and every one of them,
Well, that's the
starting with the pitch over
That's the moonshot. I
Spectacular
mentioned.
very
shot.
soon.
Yes.
So this is a camera mounted on the carrier rocket.
雷达
View of the side
遥
boosters.
测信号正常。
If everything goes right momentarily, we're going to see the jettison of the escape tower, right?
No,
Yeah.
yes.
About 120 seconds.
So that's the first critical movement we're
Yeah,
going to see.
exactly.
This is the infrared view of the rocket.
Yes.
Everything is going well.
The Taikonauts look fine to me.
They are experiencing the G forces now.
How many G forces are they enduring
I
for
mean,
now?
the maximum is during the separation of the first stage, about 3 to 5 G.
All right.
So this tends to be a period where they can experience discomfort in the flight.
Yeah. As you mentioned, the G forces are together with the vibration.
A
Again,
movement, what we call a pogo, which is up and down movement, you know,
Yeah.
faster and slow,
Forces are
faster and
they
slow,
enduring
like
I mean,
up
now?
and down.
so
So
that
that
is-
pogo is very uncomfortable.
Yeah. That is because we use the liquid propellant system.
right. We're about 90 seconds into the flight.
Okay.
Once again, you're seeing the bright flame of the side boosters,
Picking up
first
speed.
stage rocket.
So the emergency escape tower will be jettisoned soon.
Yeah. It has already completed the pitch over, right?
Yeah. About 12 seconds after liftoff.
You see the escape tower and then the strap-on booster.
Oh, that's the 3D animation
Yes.
of this flight. That's based on real telemetries.
Okay,
There
great.
you go.
Yeah.
The
That's the escape tower.
escape tower jettisons.
At about 153 seconds will be the separation of the 4 strap-on boosters.
Yes.
雷达
And that separation we just saw there really indicates a successful initial lower level flight. They were doing okay.
光学
Not until the first separation of the first stage. We'll see this one will be happening anytime.
Right. I think it's happening now.
Separate soon.
The boosters will come off momentarily.
Of course, this is the most dangerous
Great.
part, right, of the line. Okay.
Boosters are off.
酒泉
Booster separation.
And then first stage separation.
And then the first stage separation.
You see
we
the
can
forward
yeah.
light part, that's the
The f-
strap-on booster.
Yes.
The
and
first stage is
5
already
bright
separated.
dots
Yeah.
over there. The 4 little dots are the boosters. The 1 bigger dots are the first stage rocket.
With
So
each
at
stage
about,
accomplished.
210 seconds will be the separation of the payload, jettisoning of the payload fairings. Because the altitude is already very high. So at this moment, the aerodynamic forces is already become weaker and weaker because the max Q has already been passed.
I believe you're getting a visual of the second stage engine. And
The
this
second
is
stage
the
has
view inside
yeah.
the fairing.
Yeah, the second stage has a main engine with a thrust about 75 tons and 4 vernier engines to control its attitude.
On the left side, you can see it's folded solar panel. So the fairing has been
Oh,
separated.
successful
So
deployment
this
of
is
the
the
fairing.
folded solar array that is going to be deployed. So that's a camera looking at the
Right.
solar array itself.
Yes, and that's the exterior of the spacecraft actually. Now the spacecraft is entirely exposed in space
青山 USB
after the fairing
It's
opened.
already in outer space with no atmosphere, so fairing it doesn't help anymore.
And
It
you
has
can
already escaped the Earth's atmosphere at this point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's already high enough. And Yaping at this moment can enjoy the sightseeing outside the window.
But it's all dark outside the window,
Yeah.
right? See, it's all dark.
But they will see daylight very soon, minutes. They're circling like 90,
They are
95.
flying eastward. So as Yan Song has mentioned, they will see because that it's in a different time zone. We can see the working conditions of the rocket engines on the second stage.
Right. And for a first-time traveler, Ye Guangfu is pretty
Yeah, he's not.
composed there. He hasn't
wouldn't say-
even looked outside the window
I was
once.
going to say that. I was going to say that. Probably because it's dark right now.
There's
and
nothing much to see
There's
there.
not much to see. He's waiting for more light so he can get a better visual.
They're going to get the zero G in any moment now. So once you have a shutdown, they have a zero G very.
So when will be the time they
When
endure the maximum
when all
G-forces?
the engines
Are
were
shut
shut down,
down,
they will experience the zero G. So there is an indicator inside the cabin.
Okay.
And you may notice that because now it is already in a vacuum condition, and the flame of the rocket engines, the shape is quite different from when it is lifting off.
And they look pretty all right to me.
I don't know how they do it. They look so cool, calm, collected.
Just as they're on the ground, no
Just
G-forces
as if
at
they're
all.
on the ground. It's amazing to look at.
The next critical movement we're going to see is the shutdown of the second stage engine and then the spacecraft separation.
Yes, first we will shut down the main engine, and then the 4 vernier engines.
跟踪正常，扬测信号正常。
Is there anything that the astronauts can do to offset the effect of high G-forces?
At this moment, as we mentioned, it is in the normal procedure, so the maximum G-force is only 3 to 5. So they have the capability to monitor the status of the spacecraft. And we can see from the animation just in the previous video that shows the radio beams of the ground stations to the vehicle. And at this moment, the videos we can see of the camera is downloaded to the ground stations. So the ground staff can also monitor the working conditions of the rocket engines.
And Flight Commander Zhai Zhigang is sitting in the middle, Wang Yaping over there, picking up her manual, taking a
Again.
look at it again.
The book again. So I think the newcomer is testing when to have this zero G, and he's so ready.
Well, that's the fun part, yes.
But with the 4 or 5 Gs, it really doesn't affect too much the human bodies. You get the adrenaline, this thrill out of it. But human body can
That's
take
the ultimate adrenaline thrill. That's the ultimate adrenaline
That is,
rush.
for sure.
the maximum
Nothing
the human
beats it.
跟踪正常。
maximum human can take is 12 or 13 Gs.
And even more so for the first comer, for the first time traveler, Ye Guangfu, right? He's done years of training, but this time he won't be flying in a simulator no more. This is the real deal.
This is the real deal.
And only in the real flight he can experience both the G-forces and the vibration.
正常。
Looks like we have a good burn of the engine, and the telemetry tracking is good. We're going to have a shutdown in a moment.
Oh, we're hearing the call out.
Okay, the main engine has shut off.
Second stage shutdown.
Now you can see the vernier engine, the 4 vernier engines are still working now to adjust its trajectory to ensure the accuracy of the orbit.
And I keep looking if they are having any kind of communication, because I would imagine that the two veterans would try to, talk the new one through it. They would comfort him, but that's not happening, which shows that you have real
They have
confidence.
complete
They have
trust in
complete
him.
trust and confidence. in Ye
The
Guangfu.
post of the WeChat movement of Yaping has shown
The second
its
core
support to our
component
people.
I'm sure they have plenty to talk in the coming 6 months.
And her daughter also comes to the Tianhe Satellite Launch Center for her
To
mother.
watch the launch, wow.
Yeah.
What a proud moment.
And this is the view of the solar panel still folded outside the spacecraft. Later, we will see the deployment of that solar panel.
So to review-
indicating a successful launch mission. And that is usually the time we can hear the loudest cheerings and applaudings from the control room.
Yaping also shows pictures of her daughter Zhao Yunxi in her WeChat moments of her daughter's daily life, like other young mothers.
At the end of the day, she's just another mother.
Well, she's such a great inspiration for the girls out there, right?
No
a
doubt.
mother,
No
a
doubt.
great wife, and also
And can you
an
imagine
excellent
if she gives
astronaut.
another space-based lecture to all the young Chinese students looking up to her?
Yeah.
That would be a
8 years.
huge inspiration.
Yeah, 8 years
I
after the
believe.
first time she gave the lesson, that was watched by over 60 million children. Imagine that. Okay, that's the successful spacecraft separation. Okay, that 3D animation is showing you the spacecraft flying on itself. It's a three-part module, a three-module spacecraft, as you can see. On your right is the orbital module. In the middle is the re-entry module where the 3 astronauts are sitting. On your left is the service module. Right.
Opposite. The next critical step will be unfolding of the solar panels.
0G, as they're enjoying now.
Oh, this is the microgravity.
It's already in the
environment.
microgravity environment.
Floating time.
So this is first time Mr. Ye Guangfu experienced it.
So there are no pens around this time. I believe that the last time we saw some
Yeah.
pens floating as soon as they hit.
Oh, there you see. Floating manual is playing
Okay,
with
that's
it.
a 0G indicator.
That's the point of the book.
The point of the
Whose book is that?
Ye
Ye Guangfu.
Okay, so he's
new
showing
guy.
off.
Yeah, he's showing
Showing
off.
off
he
a
is-
little bit.
Now he is a
that
naughty
they're
boy.
into-
Now you want the pen?
Now the minute it asks for the pen
What
is
picture
happening.
do you want?
Yes.
So he has fulfilled his dream to come into outer space.
You can tell who's the new person among the crew. I mean, look at the other two.
Well, you see that Mr. Ye Guangfu is the fourth astronaut of China coming into orbit of the second batch of China's
wow.
astronauts.
Okay.
But it is very unique that you know that usually we do not release the names of the astronauts before their flight missions. But Mr. Ye Guangfu is an exception because he attended the trainings in Europe, the cave trainings. So his name is well known by Chinese and Europeans.
And China has only selected 3 batches of astronauts so
Yes.
far, right?
Yes.
So Ye Guangfu
and
believed to the second
the
batch.
second batch.
That was being selected when? In which year?
About maybe
More than a
10 more
decade
years
ago.
before.
15 years.
Yeah.
So none of the other members, except for Ye Guangfu from that second batch, has
Mr.
conducted
Chen
flight
Dong,
missions.
Mr. Tang Hongbo
they're
are also, and together
from
with
this.
Yaping and Liu Yang, all these are belongs to the second batch.
So
now
they're
we
younger.
have, so now we have 5 astronauts who have belongs to the second batch coming to orbit.
Okay.
华山推轨根数及分解参数法
You are seeing the 3D animation showing you the deployment of solar panels.
东风收到。
We're waiting for the final confirmation. Oh, that's the call out there. Successful deployment of solar panels. That's Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng there, and also the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang. They are watching there at the Beijing Control Center. That's earlier. This is the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the control room. Once again, they're all watching this very closely. There you see Mr. Zhang Youxia, the Vice Chairman of Central Military Commission, watching at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. And this is a younger crew we are seeing. It's they are on average 6 years younger than the previous crew, the Shenzhou 12 crew. Right, we've got Flight Commander Zhai Zhigang, 55 years
55.
old, and flight engineers Wang Yaping and Ye Guangfu, both 41.
神舟13号，我是北京。
They're trying to communicate with the astronauts, the ground
通报
staff.
座舱环境及身体状况。
They're asking the astronauts
To report
health
their
status.
health conditions and the cabin status.
座舱大气环境正常，航天员感觉良好，完毕。
That's the
That's the voice of Commander
Zhai
Zhai Zhigang saying that the taikonauts are feeling fine, he and his colleagues, and cabin status is normal.
It is always the duty of the commander to report the status of all the crew members after it come into the orbit.
So what's going to happen next? What can we expect next?
So you know that next they will open the hatch between the orbital module and the re-entry capsule, and they will be more comfortable, and they will change their suit to a common suit rather than the IVA space, not the penguin suit, but the common suit, because it will last 6.5 hours for them to before they go into the station. But before docking, they will wear their IVA spacesuit again, because it is a dangerous procedure for the docking.
For the docking.
13号前板动脑上开进窗，明白。
There seems to be increased communication.
Oh, they're opening up their
opening up
face
their face
shields.
shields.
Getting
Getting a feel of the microgravity environment, stretching their legs for a bit.
And the book again.
The book again. I can't believe they're still reading the book. I
No,
mean,
they have to follow the procedures, yes.
I would love to get a look at that book and what's in it.
Usually the successful deployment of solar panel indicates a successful launch, and we're standing by for that official announcement.
That's right.
From the launch center confirming this is a successful launch.
And also we should check the orbital parameters to see if it is accurate enough. Only in this case we can the ground commander can
Declare
announce
a
that it is a
successful
successful launch, because the accuracy of the orbit is also very important.
根据北京实时轨道与遥测数据监视判断，神舟13号
These
飞船
pictures are
已
from
进入
earlier.
近地点高度200公里，
This is a replay
远
of
地
the
点高
send-off
度
ceremony.
356公里，倾角41.3度，周期1小时30分钟的预定轨道。北京出轨根数
This is a
及
playback of that
地点分数
send-off
已向
ceremony
各方向发出
earlier today.
东风
It was yesterday Beijing time,
华山收到。
A couple hours ago.
a couple hours ago, before they were transported to the launch pad.
长江3号明白。
As we have just heard from background that the parameters came up. The inclination is correct, 41.3.
Yeah.
And then the apogee and perigee has been 200 kilometers and 360.
56.
Six, yeah.
Ah.
So that is a elliptical orbit, and then in the far point, the closer point is 200 kilometers to Earth, and far point is very close to the station. So that requires another short burn, and then we'll be able to connect with the station.
Because the average altitude of this orbit is lower than the station, so it rotating the Earth faster than the station. As I mentioned, it can chasing the station and become closer and closer, and finally dock together.
So they are now flying orbit. Do those data sound all right to you?
It's
Yeah,
it's a good start.
It must be within a margin that accurate enough for the orbit maneuver. So the orbit maneuver, we only have a limited delta V, or the capability to change its velocity. So must in a very small range to ensure we can dock with the station.
So the deployment of the solar panels was a good indication, but at the same time, after that happened, the ground staff were collecting and verifying all these data, and until they had all these data, and they were sure that the data looked good, we could expect an announcement of success from officials.
You're still watching the playback of what has happened during the last 3 hours, all those critical moments, right? Entering the capsule, and releasing of the rockets.
So at this moment, Yaping cannot receive my message on WeChat.
Do they have Wi-Fi up there? They do have Wi-Fi.
They have Wi-Fi, but maybe WeChat and microblog, currently speaking, is not able to be used on the station because of the security concerns.
Okay.
You know that technically speaking, it is possible for them to use WeChat and microblog, but you know that belongs to the internet. The internet, technically speaking, we can connect to the internet, but also we have many other concerns for security and other things.
Then what do they use the Wi-Fi for?
Well, you know that they have every astronaut have 2 mobile phones in their cabin, and they can control everything to check the status, to check the that we have a QR code on our packages, and we can scan the QR code and get the information what's inside the package.
All right, you're now watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou 13 mission. Just now, we have seen a pretty successful initial flight.
Especially after the deployment of the solar panels, things looked very good over there. And right now, we are expecting an official announcement of success from officials. In the meantime, our guests continue to discuss with us about this flight. So things looks good so far. And it will be a while before I get that announcement. But in the meantime, it looks like the astronauts are doing fine. We've been looking at visuals of them from inside the cabin. Everything looks good.
Yeah, everything looks all right to me. And Professor Yang, you were mentioning the Wi-Fi, right? They must have had some means of entertainment up there. They're staying there for 6 months.
Exactly.